You know what's interesting? We use the word cavemen like it's some brutish, mindless creature. But these people figured out how to turn rocks and sticks into tools that would change human history forever. They weren't just surviving. They were innovating in ways that would make modern engineers pause and think. Here's something most people don't realize. The first weapons weren't designed to hunt animals. That came later. The earliest tools our ancestors created were probably used to process food, crack bones, and defend against predators that saw us as prey. We weren't the apex predators yet. We had to become them. By the end of this video, you'll understand how our ancestors went from using whatever nature provided to actually engineering tools with specific purposes. We'll trace the journey from the first shaped stones to sophisticated composite weapons that required planning, skill, and genuine innovation. This isn't just a story about survival. It is about the moment humans started thinking like inventors. Chapter 1. Empty hands. You know what's weird about early humans? We weren't built to be predators. Look at us compared to the animals around us 2 million years ago. No claws, no fangs, no venom, no armored shell. Just soft skin, blunt teeth, and hands that could grip things. That's it. When you actually look at the fossil record, early hominids were pretty pathetic hunters. We were slow. A cheetah could hit 70 miles per hour. We could maybe jog for a while without collapsing. We couldn't climb trees as well as our primate cousins anymore because we decommitted to walking upright. We couldn't fly away from danger. We couldn't even run that fast compared to most predators. So here's the interesting question. How did these weak, relatively defenseless primates become the most dangerous predators on the planet? The answer starts about 3.3 million years ago in what's now Kenya. A group of early hominids, probably Australopithecus, were living near a river. They weren't human yet, not quite. Their brains were about a third the size of ours. They spent most of their time gathering plants, eating fruits, maybe scavenging meat when they could find it safely. But something was different about them compared to other primates. Their hands had changed. Over millions of years of evolution, their thumbs had moved. They could press their thumb against their fingers in a way that gave them a precision grip. They could hold small objects delicately. More importantly, they could hold objects powerfully, wrapping their whole hand around something and squeezing hard. This might not sound revolutionary, but think about it practically. A chimpanzee can pick things up, sure, but try to hand a chimp a hammer and watch them use it. The grip isn't quite right. The leverage is off. They can smash things, but there's no precision, no real control over the force and direction. Early hominids could do better. Not much better, but enough. Now, these early ancestors faced a daily problem that shaped everything that came after: hunger. The African savanna wasn't a friendly place. Large predators were everywhere. Lions, hyenas, leopards, saber-toothed cats that could crush skulls with their jaws. During the day, these predators would kill prey and then rest, leaving carcasses out in the open. Here's where it gets interesting. Hominids weren't strong enough to fight off predators for fresh kills. They weren't fast enough to chase down healthy prey. But they were smart enough to notice something: bones. After the predators ate the meat and left, after the vultures picked the carcasses clean, there was still food inside the bones. Marrow. Rich, fatty, calorie-dense marrow that most animals couldn't access. Hyenas could crush some bones with their powerful jaws, but many bones were too thick, too hard. Early hominids discovered they could break these bones. Not with their hands directly. That would just hurt. But if you picked up one rock and smashed it against a bone placed on another rock, the bone would crack open. The marrow inside became accessible. This wasn't tool-making yet. This was just using objects. Lots of animals use objects. Sea otters use rocks to crack open shells. Crows drop nuts on roads to break them. What made hominids different was what happened next. Someone, somewhere, probably after smashing rocks against bones for years, noticed that when rocks broke, they created sharp edges. And these sharp edges could do something interesting. They could cut. Imagine being that early hominid. You've just smashed open a bone for marrow. The rock you were using broke. You pick up a piece, and it's got this edge that's different from anything natural. You run your finger along it carefully. It's sharp in a way that stone normally isn't. You probably cut yourself. That's how you learned. Then, maybe you tried using it on something. A piece of hide. A chunk of meat stuck to a bone. The sharp stone cut through it easier than tearing with your hands and teeth. It worked. This discovery, this moment when someone realized that broken rocks could be useful, changed everything. We know this happened because archaeologists have found the evidence. In Kenya, at a site called Lomekvi 3, they discovered stone tools dating back 3.3 million years. These weren't sophisticated tools. They were just rocks that had been deliberately smashed to create sharp edges. But they proved something crucial. Our ancestors were thinking about tools more than 3 million years ago. For context, this is more than 1 million years before the Homo genus even existed. This is before human brains grew large. This is before anyone could speak language as we know it. And yet, they were making tools. But here's what's really fascinating. For about 1 million years after that, the tools barely changed. Archaeological sites from 3.3 million years ago show simple smashed rocks. Sites from 2.5 million years ago show simple smashed rocks. The technology stagnated for an enormous stretch of time. Why? Probably because it was enough. These early hominids were still mostly vegetarian. They used stones to smash open nuts, to break bones for marrow, to occasionally cut through tough plant fibers or scavenge meat. They didn't need weapons yet because they weren't really hunting. They were surviving, finding calories where they could, avoiding predators. Their hands were their primary tools. They could grip. They could throw objects at threats, though not accurately. They could gesture to communicate basic ideas to each other. They could hold an infant while gathering food with the other hand. These hands were versatile, but they weren't dangerous. Think about what it was like to be an early hominid during this period. You wake up in a group of maybe 20 to 40 individuals. You're sleeping in trees or in rocky areas where predators can't easily reach you. As the sun comes up, you climb down carefully. The group stays together because there's safety in numbers. You spend the morning gathering fruits, nuts, roots, insects. If you're lucky, you find a termite mound and use a stick to fish out termites, protein. The children play nearby, learning by watching adults. The adults keep their eyes moving, always watching for threats. Midday, someone spots vultures circling. That means a kill. The group moves carefully toward it. When you arrive, you see a partially eaten antelope. The predator is gone, resting somewhere in the shade. Hyenas are starting to gather, but your group is larger. You grab what you can. This is when the stones become crucial. You pick up a large bone, place it on a flat rock, and use another rock to smash it open. Crack. The bone splits. Inside is the rich marrow. You scoop it out with your fingers. Eat it quickly. It's one of the best sources of calories and fat you'll get. But you're always nervous. Every few seconds, you look up. Check for danger. Listen for sounds. Smell the air. Because at any moment, the predator could come back, or hyenas could attack, or another group of hominids could challenge you for this resource. Your hands hold the rocks that get you this food, but they're not weapons. Not yet. If a predator charges, you run. If you can't run, you might throw rocks, wave sticks, make noise to look bigger and more threatening. Sometimes it works. Sometimes someone in the group gets killed. This was the world that shaped our ancestors for millions of years. A world where hands were tools for survival, but not tools for dominance. A world where humans weren't at the top of the food chain. We were in the middle, trying to find our niche, using our slightly better than average intelligence and our uniquely useful hands to get by. But natural selection was working. The individuals who were better at using their hands survived more often. The ones who could grip stones more effectively could get more marrow. The ones who could break rocks more efficiently could access more food. Very slowly, generation after generation, hand anatomy improved. Grip strength increased. Fine motor control developed. And the brain was growing too. Not because of tools alone, but because of the complex social dynamics required to survive. You needed to remember who to trust, who shared food and who hoarded it, which individuals would support you in a conflict and which wouldn't. You needed to read intentions, predict behavior, plan for tomorrow. All of this was happening with empty hands. Yes, they held rocks sometimes. Yes, they used sticks. But there were no weapons yet. No designed tools meant specifically to kill. No warfare. No organized hunting of large, dangerous prey. That was all coming. But first, there had to be this foundation. Millions of years of evolution that gave us hands capable of precision and power. Millions of years of brain development that gave us the intelligence to see possibilities in objects around us. Millions of years of social evolution that let us work together, communicate, and learn from each other. The invention of weapons didn't happen in a single moment. It happened across millions of years, built on top of these basic foundations. Empty hands that could grip, brains that could observe and remember, social groups that could cooperate. By about 2.6 million years ago, something was starting to shift. Climate change was making Africa drier. Forests were shrinking. Savannas were expanding. Food was becoming harder to find. The easy calories from fruits and plants were less abundant. Early Homo species were evolving. Their brains were growing larger, and they were hungry. Increasingly hungry. A larger brain requires enormous amounts of energy. The human brain today uses about 20% of our body as calories, despite being only 2% of our body weight. As our ancestors' brains grew, they needed more food. Scavenging wasn't going to be enough anymore. Plant gathering wasn't going to cut it. Somehow, these early humans needed to access more meat, more protein, more fat. And that meant they needed to stop just finding dead animals and start killing live ones. But how do you kill an animal when you have empty hands? When the animal is faster, stronger, has natural weapons, and you have nothing but soft skin and blunt teeth. The answer was already sitting in their hands. Those simple sharp stones, those basic broken rocks that they've been using for 1 million years to process food, were about to become something more. They were about to become weapons. Chapter 2. Stone Discovery. So what makes a rock into a tool? Is not as simple as you might think. You can't just pick up any stone and expect it to work. Our ancestors had to learn this through trial and error, probably cutting themselves hundreds of times in the process. The breakthrough came with understanding which stones could break in useful ways. Most rocks, when you smash them, just crumble or split in unpredictable directions. They create rough edges, blunt fractures, nothing particularly useful. But certain types of stone have a special property. They fracture conchoidally. That's the technical term archaeologists use, but what it means is practical. When you strike these stones at the right angle with the right force, they break in a predictable curve, like the inside of a seashell. This creates an edge that's incredibly sharp, sharper than most metal knives, actually. Under a microscope, a freshly made stone edge can be just a few molecules thick. It's sharp enough to slice through hide, meat, even bone with the right technique. The best stones for this are flint, chert, obsidian, and similar fine-grained rocks. Early humans didn't know the geology, of course. They couldn't explain why these rocks worked better, but they learned to recognize them. They learned which riverbeds had the right stones, which outcroppings, which areas were worth returning to. This knowledge became valuable. Imagine being a young hominid around 2.5 million years ago, watching older members of your group. They go to specific places to get stones. They reject most rocks and carefully select certain ones. They carry these stones back to camp. You watch and learn. Which colors mean good stone? Which weight feels right? Which sound they make when tapped together? The oldest clear evidence of intentional tool-making comes from the Old Down stone tools, named after Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, where they were first discovered. These date back about 2.6 million years. By this point, early Homo species, probably Homo habilis, whose name literally means handy man, were deliberately making stone tools. The process wasn't complicated, but it required understanding. You take one stone, the core, and strike it with another stone, the hammerstone. The angle matters. Hit too straight on, and nothing useful happens. Hit at about 60 degrees, and a flake breaks off with a sharp edge. That flake becomes your tool. These first stone tools were simple, just flakes with one sharp edge, maybe a few inches long. They didn't look impressive, but they changed everything because they gave humans something no animal had: the ability to create a cutting edge sharper than any tooth, harder than any claw, that could be replaced when it dulled. Think about what this meant practically. Before stone tools, if you found a dead animal, you could only eat what you could tear off with your hands and teeth. The tough hide would stop you. You'd get some meat, but most of the carcass was inaccessible. With a sharp stone flake, you could cut through the hide. You could slice meat away from bone efficiently. You could access tendons, organs, everything. A carcass that might have fed you for an hour could now feed your group for hours. But hear us, where it gets really interesting. These sharp stones weren't just for processing dead animals. At some point, we're not sure exactly when, someone realized they could use these same stones in a different way. Archaeologists debate this, but the evidence suggests that by about 2 million years ago, early humans were starting to hunt small animals, not just scavenge. And stone tools played a role in this transition. A sharp flake could be used to cut a stick into a point. That pointed stick could be used to dig out burrowing animals or pin down small prey. The stone itself could be jabbed at a small animal, stunning or killing it. These weren't sophisticated weapons yet. We're talking about hunting things like lizards, small mammals, maybe young or injured larger animals. But it was a start. Humans were beginning to move from being opportunistic scavengers to being active hunters. The stone tools from this period tell us something else interesting. Humans were planning ahead. At many archaeological sites, you find tools that were made in one location but used in another, sometimes miles away. This means someone made a sharp stone, thought I might need this later, and carried it with them. That's abstract thinking. That's planning for future scenarios. Some groups even created caches, hidden stockpiles of stone tools stored at specific locations. They were setting up supply points. If you regularly traveled between areas, you could leave tools along your route rather than carrying everything. This required memory, planning, and understanding of geography. As humans got better at making stone tools, something else happened. Teaching became more important. A young ape can learn to use a stick through observation and trial and error. But making a good stone tool requires specific techniques that aren't obvious just from watching. You need to understand which stone to use as a core, which to use as a hammer, where to strike, how hard, at what angle. So adults started teaching children. Not with language as we know it. Language probably didn't exist yet in any complex form, but through demonstration, through guided practice, through correction. An adult would sit with a child, show them the process, let them try, stop them when they were about to make a mistake, guide their hands to the right position. This teaching created something anthropologists call cultural transmission, information that wasn't just genetic, wasn't just instinctive, but was learned and passed down through generations. Different groups of humans started developing slightly different techniques. Regional styles of tool-making emerged. By about 1.76 million years ago, a new style appeared: atlatl tools. These were more sophisticated than old Allen tools. The most famous atlatl tool is the hand axe, a teardrop-shaped stone tool that was flaked on both sides to create a pointed end and sharp edges all around. Making a hand axe required real skill. You had to remove dozens or even hundreds of flakes in the right sequence to create the symmetrical shape. It took planning, patience, and practice. Archaeologists have tried to replicate these tools, and even with modern knowledge, it takes hours of practice to make a decent hand axe. Why did humans put so much effort into making these symmetrical, almost beautiful tools? For years, archaeologists thought it was purely functional. Better tools meant better survival. But some researchers now think there might have been more to it. The symmetry is more than what's needed for function. Some hand axes are far too large to be practical. Some are made from rare, colorful stones that don't work any better than common stones. Maybe these hand axes were also social objects. A well-made hand axe demonstrated skill, patience, intelligence. Perhaps they were used to attract mates, like a peacock's tail. Perhaps they were traded as valuable objects. Perhaps they served as gifts to strengthen social bonds. We don't know for certain, but the evidence suggests these stones were becoming more than just tools. They were becoming part of human culture. What we do know is that hand axes were effective weapons. The pointed end could pierce. The sharp edges could slash. They fit comfortably in a human hand and could be held securely during use. Unlike a simple flake that might cut your hand while you're using it, a hand axe could be gripped safely with the thick base in your palm and the working end away from your fingers. Experiments by archaeologists have shown that a hand axe can be used to kill medium-sized animals with surprising efficiency. A solid blow to the head of an animal like a gazelle could stun or kill it. The sharp edges could be used to defend against predators. And of course, once you'd killed something, the same tool could be used to butcher it. For the first time, humans had a tool that was specifically designed to be held and used as a weapon, not just a cutting edge for processing food. This was a cognitive leap. Someone thought, I need something that can hurt animals. What shape would work best? What would fit in my hand comfortably? What would give me reach? The archaeological record shows that human brain size was increasing dramatically during this same period. Homo erectus, who appeared about 1.9 million years ago, had a brain about 70% the size of modern humans, much larger than earlier hominids. This larger brain allowed for more complex thinking, better planning, more sophisticated tool-making. And with these better tools came better nutrition. More meat in the diet meant more protein, more calories, more nutrients that supported brain growth. It was a feedback loop. Bigger brains allowed better tools. Better tools allowed more meat. More meat supported bigger brains. But there was still a major limitation. These were close-range weapons. To use a hand axe to kill an animal, you had to get within arm's reach. And most animals don't let you get that close, especially if they sense you're a threat. Humans were better hunters than they'd been a million years earlier, but they were still limited. The stone tools from this era also show us something about human movement. Stone tools made from specific types of rock have been found hundreds of miles from where those rocks naturally occur. This tells us that humans were either traveling enormous distances or trading with other groups. Either way, it indicates increasing sophistication in how humans lived and organized themselves. Different groups developed different tool-making traditions. The atlatl tradition, with its hand axes, dominated Africa and parts of Europe and Asia for over 1 million years. But some groups in Asia never developed hand axes and stuck with simpler tools. This suggests that isolated populations were innovating separately, developing their own solutions to similar problems. What's fascinating is how conservative these tool technologies were. Once a group learned to make a type of tool, they might use that same design for hundreds of thousands of years with little change. This is very different from modern humans, who constantly innovate and improve designs. It suggests that while these early humans could learn complex skills, they weren't as creative or innovative as we are. They did what worked and didn't feel compelled to experiment much. The stone tools themselves are beautiful objects in their way. Hold a well-made hand axe, and you can feel how it fits perfectly in your palm. Run your finger along the edge, carefully, and you can appreciate the sharpness. These weren't crude rocks. They were precision tools made by intelligent beings who understood materials, force, angles, and function. By about 1 million years ago, humans had spread across Africa and into Europe and Asia, carrying their stone tool technology with them. Different environments demanded different adaptations, but the basic principle remained. Strike one rock with another to create sharp edges. These stones gave humans something that changed their place in nature. They gave us teeth that didn't dull, claws that could be replaced, cutting edges that could be carried and used whenever needed. For the first time in the history of life on Earth, an animal could create a part of their body that wasn't biological, a tool that extended their capabilities beyond what evolution had given them. This was the foundation. Everything that came after, spears, arrows, swords, guns, all of it traces back to this moment when someone picked up a stone, struck it against another stone, and created an edge sharp enough to cut. But stones alone weren't going to make humans apex predators. They were too heavy to carry many of them. They broke. They required specific materials that weren't always available. And most importantly, they required you to get close to your prey or your enemy. The next great leap was coming, but it required thinking about materials differently. It required combining materials. And it required understanding something about nature that wouldn't seem obvious. Sometimes the best tool isn't the hardest material. Sometimes it's the most flexible one. Chapter 3. Sharp Edge. Let's talk about what a sharp edge actually does, because understanding this helps explain why it was so revolutionary for early humans. When you cut something, meat, hide, plant fiber, you're essentially wedging apart the molecules that hold that material together. A sharp edge concentrates force into a very small area. Think of it this way. If you press your palm against your arm, nothing happens. But if you press a knife edge against your arm with the same force, it cuts. The force is the same, but the edge concentrates that force into such a tiny line that it overcomes the molecular bonds. The sharper the edge, the less force you need. A stone tool freshly flaked from flint can have an edge just nanometers thick, far sharper than any metal blade you'd find in a modern kitchen. Under electron microscopes, these stone edges look almost impossibly thin. This is why surgeons sometimes still use obsidian scalpels for certain delicate procedures. They're sharper than steel. Early humans discovered this sharpness, but they also discovered its limitation. Sharp edges are fragile. That impossibly thin edge breaks easily. Hit it against bone and a piece chips off. Drop the tool and it might shatter. Use it extensively and the edge becomes dull, microfractures forming along the blade. This created a problem that drove a lot of innovation. How do you maintain a sharp edge? How do you make it last longer? Different groups came up with different solutions, and we can track these solutions in the archaeological record. The simplest solution was just making more tools. If a sharp flake dulls quickly, carry multiple flakes. Use one until it doesn't cut well anymore. Then grab another. Archaeological sites from around 2 million years ago often have scattered flakes everywhere, evidence that early humans were making tools, using them until they dulled, then making more rather than trying to sharpen or maintain them. But this was wasteful. Good stone wasn't always easy to find. And carrying dozens of stone flakes wasn't practical, especially as humans were increasingly mobile, traveling longer distances. So someone figured out resharpening. If you have a dull stone tool, you can flake off the dull edge to reveal fresh, sharp stone underneath. This requires precision. You need to remove just enough material to expose a new edge without destroying the whole tool. But it works. A single stone core could provide multiple sharp edges over its lifetime if you knew how to maintain it. We know this was happening because archaeologists find tools that show evidence of resharpening. The shape has changed from its original form. Flake scars show multiple generations of edge removal. Some tools were resharpened so many times they became tiny, reduced to almost nothing through repeated maintenance. This maintenance required forward planning. You couldn't just use tools until they broke. You had to monitor their condition, resharpen them before they became useless, and eventually retire them when there was nothing left to work with. This is more complex thinking than it might seem. It requires assessing current state, predicting future needs, and taking action before a problem becomes critical. Around 500,000 years ago, a new innovation appeared: hafting. This is the technical term for attaching a stone tool to a handle, and it changed everything about how sharp edges could be used. Before hafting, you held the stone tool directly in your hand. This limited how hard you could strike with it because you couldn't risk injuring your hand. It limited the leverage you could apply, and it meant the stone was doing double duty. It had to be a good cutting implement and a good handle. With hafting, these functions could be separated. The stone just needed to be sharp. The handle provided grip, length, leverage. Suddenly, a small sharp stone could be attached to a stick, creating a spear, or mounted on a club, creating a weapon that combined blunt force with cutting edge. The earliest evidence of hafting is controversial because organic materials like wood rarely preserve. But we have indirect evidence. Wear patterns on stone tools that suggest they were mounted in handles, stone tools shaped in ways that only make sense if they were hafted, and eventually rare finds where resin or binding materials survive. One of the most famous examples comes from a site in Germany called Schningen, dated to about 300,000 years ago. Archaeologists found wooden spears, entire spears, preserved in oxygen-poor conditions that prevented decay. These weren't simple pointed sticks. They were carefully crafted, made from spruce trees, with the thickest and heaviest part about a third of the way from the front, the same balance point as a modern javelin. But here's what's interesting. These spears didn't have stone points. They were just sharpened wood. This tells us that humans understood the principle of hafting and combination tools, but they were still figuring out exactly how to apply it. They knew that a long wooden shaft gave reach and leverage. They just hadn't yet combined that consistently with stone cutting edges. Why did it take so long? Partly because hafting is technically challenging. You need to attach stone to wood securely enough that it doesn't fall off during use. But you also need to be able to replace the stone when it breaks. The solutions early humans developed were ingenious. Some groups used resin, tree sap collected and heated to make it sticky. They'd apply this to the shaft, press the stone tool into it, and let it cool and harden. Other groups carved notches in the wooden shaft and wedged the stone into place. Still others used cordage, twisted plant fibers or animal sinew, to lash the stone to the shaft. Each of these methods required knowledge of materials. Which trees produce good resin? How do you heat it without burning it? What temperature does it need to reach to be sticky but workable? What kind of fibers make strong cordage? How do you process animal sinew? How do you prepare it? This knowledge couldn't be easily figured out through random trial and error. It had to be taught, learned, practiced, and passed down. A young human learning to haft a tool would watch experienced adults receive correction, practice under supervision. The learning curve was steep. But once you had a hafted tool, the advantages were enormous. A stone cutting edge mounted on a wooden shaft gave you reach. You could stab at an animal without getting within its striking distance. You could deliver much more force because you had leverage. The handle protected your hand from the sharp edges. And when the stone broke, you could replace just the stone rather than starting over entirely. Hafted tools also allowed for specialization. You could have a heavy-duty tool with a thick, robust stone edge for chopping through bone and tough materials. You could have a delicate tool with a thin, razor-sharp edge for precision cutting of meat and hide. You could have long hafted tools for reaching and thrusting, short hafted tools for close work. By about 200,000 years ago, around when anatomically modern, Homo sapiens was evolving, hafted tools were becoming common. Different groups developed different styles. In Africa, people were creating small, standardized stone points designed specifically for hafting. In Europe, Neanderthals were making their own hafted tools with somewhat different designs. In Asia, various human populations were developing their own approaches. The sharp edge itself was also evolving. Toolmakers were learning to create more complex shapes. Instead of just simple flakes, they were creating points with barbs, edges with serrations, blades with multiple cutting surfaces. Each innovation made the tools more effective for specific tasks. Serrated edges, for example, work better on tough materials like hide or wood. The teeth catch and tear rather than just pressing through. Early humans probably discovered this accidentally. A stone that broke in a particular way created a naturally serrated edge, and someone noticed it worked better for certain tasks. Barbs on spear points prevent the weapon from pulling back out of an animal easily. Once thrust into flesh, the barbs catch, keeping the weapon embedded. This means a wounded animal carries the weapon with it, continuing to cause damage and bleeding as it tries to flee. Cool, perhaps, but effective for hunters who couldn't always deliver an immediately fatal blow. The psychology of having these sharp edges also mattered. Imagine being one of our ancestors around 200,000 years ago. You're part of a group of maybe 30 people. For most of human history, groups were small because the environment couldn't support large populations in one area. Every adult in your group has tools. Sharp stones, hafted and ready. When you go out to hunt, you're not facing large prey with just your bare hands and your wits. You're armed. You have reach. You have cutting power. This changes how you think about the world. Animals that once seemed impossibly dangerous are now possible prey. You can't take down an elephant alone, but maybe your group can if you coordinate, if you use your spears to wound it, if you're patient and follow it until it weakens from blood loss. Animals that once dominated the landscape start to avoid areas where humans are common because humans have become dangerous. There's a shift in the archaeological record around this time. We start finding evidence of humans hunting larger, more dangerous prey. We find kill sites where clearly humans processed entire large animals, not just scavenged pieces. We find cave art depicting hunting scenes where humans with spears surround large animals. The sharp edge made all of this possible, but it also created new social dynamics. A sharp tool is useful for hunting, but it's also dangerous to other humans. In a world where everyone is armed with cutting edges that can kill, social rules become crucial. How do you manage conflict? How do you prevent disputes from becoming lethal? Different groups probably developed different solutions. Some might have had strict taboos against using tools as weapons against group members. Some might have had individuals who served as mediators or leaders who could impose rules. Some might have simply been more violent, with frequent injuries and deaths from interpersonal conflict. We see evidence of violence in the archaeological record from this period. Skeletons with weapon wounds, embedded stone points in bone, mass graves that suggest group conflicts. The sharp edge that allowed humans to hunt effectively also made humans dangerous to each other. But mostly, these tools were used for survival. Hunting provided meat, and meat provided the calories and nutrients needed to support our expensive brains. The sharp edge was the tool that let humans access this rich food source reliably. By about 100,000 years ago, modern humans in Africa were creating incredibly sophisticated stone tools. Some were geometric, triangles, crescents, trapezoids, designed to be hafted in specific ways. Some were made using techniques that required heating the stone first to change its flaking properties. This shows real understanding of material science, even if they couldn't have explained it in those terms. The sharpness itself became something humans could optimize. They learned that certain angles created sharper edges. They learned that particular flaking techniques left smoother, sharper surfaces. They learned which stones could be made sharpest and which were more durable, even if less sharp. This knowledge was valuable. A skilled toolmaker could provide sharp edges for the entire group. Their knowledge meant the difference between successful hunts and hungry nights. They probably gained status from this skill, received better shares of food, had more social influence. The sharp edge, in the end, was more than just physics and geometry. It was a symbol of human intelligence, our ability to see potential in raw materials, to shape the world to our needs, to plan ahead and create solutions to problems. That thin line where molecules are wedged apart represented the thin line where humans were becoming something new, not just another animal, but a species that could remake nature itself. And this was still early. The sharp edge was just the beginning. Humans were about to discover that combining materials could create something even more powerful than stone alone. They were about to invent tools that could fly. Chapter 4. Wooden tools. Wood doesn't survive well in the archaeological record. It rots, burns, gets eaten by insects, breaks down into soil. This creates a massive blind spot in our understanding of early human technology, because our ancestors almost certainly used wood extensively, probably more than stone. Think about it practically. Stone is hard to work, heavy to carry, and only useful for certain tasks. Wood is everywhere in most environments, easy to shape compared to stone, lightweight, and incredibly versatile. You can make a digging stick in minutes. A simple club takes barely longer. A spear shaft requires more work, but is still achievable in an afternoon. The problem is that we only find wooden tools in exceptional circumstances. Waterlogged sites where oxygen couldn't reach the wood, extremely dry caves, frozen environments. These rare preservation conditions give us glimpses of what was probably happening everywhere, all the time, throughout human history. The oldest known wooden tools are the skinning and spears I mentioned earlier, dated to about 300,000 years ago. But humans were almost certainly using wooden tools millions of years before that. We just don't have the evidence because it rotted away. What would early wooden tools have looked like? The simplest is just a stick. Pick up a fallen branch, and you already have something useful. You can use it to dig for roots, flip over rocks to find insects, knock fruit down from trees, probe into holes to check for snakes or other dangers, keep predators at bay by swinging it. But even a simple stick becomes more useful with modification. Sharpen one end by scraping it against a rock, and now you have a digging tool that penetrates soil more easily. Harden that sharpened end in a fire, and it becomes more durable. Strip the side branches off to make it smooth, and it's easier to handle and thrust. These modifications require thinking ahead. You're not just using what nature provides. You're imagining how the object could be better, and then making it better. This is sophisticated cognition, even if the actual physical work is simple. By the time we get to those skinning and spears, humans had clearly mastered wooden tool technology. These spears were made from carefully selected spruce trees, probably chosen because spruce is relatively straight-grained and doesn't split easily. The tools used to make them would have been stone, cutting, scraping, shaving wood away to create the desired shape. Each spear was about 6 to 7 feet long. They tapered from thick in the middle to thinner at both ends, with the maximum thickness about 1/3 of the way from the front. This isn't random. This is the same center of gravity you find in modern javelins. It means the spear flies straight when thrown, rotating around its center point, with the heavy front section pulling it forward through the air. Someone figured this out 300,000 years ago. They understood projectile physics well enough to deliberately design a balanced throwing weapon. They couldn't have explained the mathematics, but through experimentation and observation, they'd learned what worked. The Hardening site also tells us something else important. These spears were found alongside butchered horse bones. The horses had been killed and processed for meat. The spears weren't just symbolic objects or tools for show. They were weapons actively used for hunting large, dangerous prey. Horses are fast. They can run at speeds humans can't match. The only way to hunt them effectively with wooden spears is to either ambush them or drive them into a confined area where they can't escape. Either way, it requires planning, coordination among multiple hunters, and understanding of animal behavior. This means that by 300,000 years ago, humans had developed sophisticated hunting strategies that relied on wooden weapons. They were no longer just opportunistic scavengers or hunters of small prey. They were actively taking down large animals that could provide enough meat to feed a group for days. But let's think about the other ways wooden tools would have been used. Clubs are obvious. A heavy stick makes an effective weapon for close combat. Hit someone or something hard enough with a club, and you can stun or kill them. Clubs require less skill than spears or other weapons. You just swing hard at your target. Archaeological evidence for clubs is scarce because wood rarely survives, but we can make reasonable inferences. Some stones from archaeological sites show damage consistent with being used as club heads, mounted on wooden handles to increase their impact. And in some rare cave art, we see depictions of humans carrying what appear to be clubs. Digging sticks are another fundamental wooden tool. Before agriculture, before metal spades, humans dug with sharpened sticks. This allowed access to roots, tubers, buried water sources, and burrowing animals. In many environments, root vegetables would have been a crucial calorie source, especially during seasons when fruits and above-ground plants were scarce. Women likely used digging sticks more than men. In most hunter-gatherer societies we can observe today, women do most of the gathering while men do most of the hunting. This division isn't universal and probably wasn't rigid in the past either, but it's common enough that we can cautiously suggest early human groups probably had similar patterns. This means wooden tools had gendered associations. Spears and clubs were probably more associated with men and hunting. Digging sticks were probably more associated with women and gathering. But both were essential. Gathering likely provided more reliable calories than hunting. You can't always find game, but roots and plants are usually available if you know where to look. Fire hardening made wooden tools much more effective. If you've never done this, here's how it works. Take a wooden point and hold it near flames. Not in them, but near them in the hot air above the fire. The heat drives out moisture and causes chemical changes in the wood. The surface becomes harder, more dense, less likely to splinter. A fire-hardened wooden point can pierce surprisingly tough materials. Early humans probably discovered this accidentally. Someone left a wooden tool near the fire. Later, they noticed that the heated portion was harder than the rest. Eventually, they figured out how to deliberately heat-treat wood to improve it. Fire hardening requires careful control. Too much heat and the wood burns. Too little and it doesn't harden properly. The wood needs to be rotated evenly to harden all sides. This takes patience and attention, but the result is a wooden point that can function almost like a stone point, especially against soft tissue. Some researchers believe that fire-hardened wooden spears were humanity's primary hunting weapon for hundreds of thousands of years before stone points became common. Wood was easier to work than stone. more readily available, and lighter to carry. A fire-hardened wooden spear might not be as sharp as a stone-tipped spear, but it was sharp enough, and you could make a new one quickly if yours broke. Wooden tools also allowed for innovation in terms of size and shape. With stone, you're limited by the size of the rock and how it fractures. With wood, you can make tools any length you want. Need a longer spear for hunting large animals? Cut a longer branch. Need a shorter stabbing weapon for close combat? Cut it shorter. This flexibility meant that wooden tools could be customized for specific purposes. Different types of game might require different spear lengths. Different terrains might call for different tool designs. A dense forest where you couldn't throw spears effectively would favor shorter, stabbing spears. An open savanna where you could throw from a distance would favor longer, lighter spears designed as projectiles. The social implications of wooden tools are fascinating. Stone tools required specialized knowledge and access to specific materials. Not everyone could make good stone tools, but almost everyone could work with wood. Children could learn to make simple wooden tools at a young age. This democratized technology in a way that stone never could. A young child, maybe 5 or 6 years old, could find a stick, could learn to sharpen it by scraping it against a rock, could use it to dig for roots or insects. This gave children the ability to contribute to the group's food supply from an early age. They weren't just dependents being fed by adults. They could gather their own food using tools they made themselves. This early involvement in tool making and food gathering probably contributed to human cognitive development. Children's brains were being shaped by the need to find materials, create tools, and use them effectively. Learning these skills required observation, practice, problem solving, and creativity. Wooden tools also had a short lifespan compared to stone. A wooden spear might last a few hunts before breaking. A digging stick might splinter after intensive use. This meant humans were constantly making new tools, constantly working with materials, constantly practicing their skills. Compare this to stone tools, which could last for years if maintained. A hand axe passed down through generations represented accumulated knowledge and effort. But a wooden spear made fresh for each hunt represented current skill and immediate practical knowledge. By about 200,000 years ago, humans were combining wood and stone in increasingly sophisticated ways. Not just hafting a stone point onto a wooden shaft, but creating composite tools where each material did what it did best. Wood provided length, flexibility, and lightness. Stone provided hardness, sharpness, and durability. Some spears had stone points for penetration and stone barbs along the shaft for secondary cutting. Some had stone weights attached to increase momentum. Different groups experimented with different configurations, and successful designs spread through cultural transmission. We also see evidence of wooden tools being used for purposes beyond hunting and gathering. Some wooden artifacts appear to be musical instruments, pipes or flutes carved from hollow branches. Some seem to be ceremonial objects. Wood was being used for cultural purposes, not just survival. The versatility of wood allowed for creativity in ways stone didn't. You could carve patterns into wood. You could bend it by heating and shaping it. You could hollow it out to create containers. You could weave thin wooden strips into baskets or mats. Each of these innovations expanded what humans could do, how they could live, what they could create. Storage was revolutionized by wooden containers. Before this, if you gathered roots or fruits, you could only carry what you could hold in your hands or perhaps in a skin bag. But a woven basket could carry much more. You could gather efficiently, filling your basket, then return to camp with a large load. This might not sound revolutionary, but it changed gathering strategies fundamentally. Instead of eating as you gathered, you could gather first and distribute later. This encouraged sharing, strengthened social bonds, and allowed for more efficient use of time and energy. Wooden tools also enabled new forms of construction. Wooden poles could support shelters. Woven branches could create windbreaks or walls. This gave humans more control over their environment. They weren't entirely dependent on finding natural shelter in caves or under rock overhangs. They could create shelter wherever they needed it. The knowledge required to work with wood effectively was substantial. You needed to know which woods were best for which purposes. Ash is flexible and shock-resistant, good for tool handles. Oak is hard and durable, good for clubs or digging sticks. Willow is easy to work when wet and maintains its shape when dry, good for weaving. Different societies developed different expertise based on what trees grew in their environments. Seasonal changes affected wood quality. Wood cut in winter, when sap isn't flowing, is often denser and stronger. Wood cut in spring is easier to work, but may warp as it dries. Early humans probably noticed these patterns and timed their tool-making accordingly. The relationship between humans and trees became increasingly important. Humans learned which trees to harvest from, how to harvest without killing the tree, how to encourage straight growth that would produce better materials. This wasn't cultivation yet, but it was environment management. By about 100,000 years ago, modern humans were creating wooden tools of remarkable sophistication. Some had multiple components, a shaft, a point, binding materials, decorative elements. Making such a tool could take days of work. This investment of time indicates that these tools were valued, maintained, perhaps even cherished. There's evidence that some wooden tools were repaired rather than discarded when damaged. A broken spear shaft could be shortened and continued to be used. A worn digging stick could be resharpened. This maintenance behavior shows that humans valued their tools as more than just disposable objects. Wooden tools also played a role in human migration. As humans spread out of Africa and into diverse environments around the world, they encountered new types of wood, new challenges, new opportunities. The tools they'd used in African savannas had to be adapted for Asian forests, European grasslands, Australian deserts. This adaptability was possible because wooden tools were easy to modify and experiment with. You could try a new wood species, see how it worked, adjust your techniques accordingly. Stone tools were more conservative. Once you learned a technique, you tended to stick with it. Wood encouraged experimentation. The loss of wooden tools from the archaeological record means we're missing a huge part of the human story. Every time we find preserved wooden artifacts, they reveal complexity we hadn't expected. The Cavemen spears showed that humans 300,000 years ago understood projectophysics. Other finds have shown sophisticated woodworking techniques, carefully joined components, deliberate design choices. What else don't we know because the evidence rotted away? What innovations were made, used for thousands of years, and then lost to time because wood doesn't last? We'll never know the full story, but we can be confident that wooden tools were absolutely central to human evolution and survival. Wood gave humans flexibility, literally and figuratively. It allowed rapid innovation, individual customization, and widespread access to technology. Combined with stone, it created tools that were greater than the sum of their parts. And it was about to enable the next great leap in weapon technology. Tools that could kill from a distance. Chapter 5. Fire-hardening fire changed everything for humans. Not just because it provided warmth and protection, but because it was a tool that could transform other tools. And one of its most important applications was making wooden weapons deadlier. We don't know exactly when humans first controlled fire. The evidence is frustratingly unclear. There are hints of fire use going back 1.5 million years or more. Burned bones, heated stones, traces of ash in cave layers. But controlled fire, fire that humans could start and maintain reliably, probably came much later. Maybe 400,000 years ago, possibly even more recently. What we do know is that once humans mastered fire, they started experimenting with what it could do. And one early discovery was that fire could make wood harder. Here's what happens when you heat wood carefully. Wood is made up of cellulose fibers held together by lignin. When you heat it gently, without burning it, the moisture inside evaporates. The lignin undergoes chemical changes, becoming more rigid. The surface becomes denser. The wood doesn't just dry out, it fundamentally changes its structure at a molecular level. A fire-hardened wooden point is dramatically different from an untreated one. Push an untreated wooden point into soil, and it compresses, splinters, wears down quickly. Push a fire-hardened point into the same soil, and it maintains its shape, resists damage, lasts much longer. For piercing flesh, the difference is even more significant. An untreated point might penetrate skin, but then mushroom out as it encounters resistance, losing its effectiveness. A fire-hardened point maintains its shape, continues to penetrate, can reach vital organs. Early humans probably discovered this accidentally, as I mentioned before. A wooden spear left near the fire overnight. In the morning, someone noticed the heated end was different. Harder, darker, tougher. They tried using it and found it worked better. Eventually, this accidental discovery became deliberate technique. The process requires care. You can't just shove the wood into flames. That burns it, makes it brittle and weak. Instead, you hold it in the hot air above the fire or near the coals. You rotate it constantly to heat all sides evenly. You check it frequently, feeling the wood, watching for the color change that indicates proper treatment. Different woods respond differently to heat treatment. Some harden more than others. Some require higher temperatures. Some are more forgiving of mistakes. Early humans had to learn through experimentation which woods worked best and what techniques to use for each type. This knowledge became valuable. An individual who understood fire hardening could produce superior weapons. Their spears penetrated deeper. Their digging sticks lasted longer. Their stakes for traps were more durable. This person's skills contributed directly to the group's survival. The archaeological evidence for fire hardening is indirect but compelling. We find wooden points from ancient sites that show the characteristic darkening and density changes of fire treatment. We find patterns of burning that are too controlled, too specific to be natural. And we can see the practical advantages when researchers replicate these ancient techniques. Modern experimental archaeology has tested fire-hardened spears against untreated ones. The results are dramatic. Fire-hardened points penetrate ballistic gel, which simulates flesh with much less force. They maintain their shape through multiple impacts. They can pierce thick hide that would stop untreated wood. This meant that humans without access to stone could still create effective hunting weapons. A fire-hardened wooden spear wasn't as good as a stone-tipped spear, but it was good enough. And in environments where suitable stone was scarce, fire hardening became even more important. But fire's relationship with wooden tools went beyond hardening points. Fire could also be used to shape wood. If you heat wood until it becomes pliable, you can bend it into shapes that would be impossible otherwise. Let it cool while held in position, and it maintains that new shape. This allowed for creation of curved tools. Bent branches could become the frames for shelters. Wood could be shaped into hooks for fishing or retrieving objects. Curved throwing sticks, early boomerangs, could be created. Weapons that flew in arcs and could strike prey from unexpected angles. Fire could also be used to hollow out wood. Want to create a bowl or container? You can carve it laboriously with stone tools, or you can use controlled burning to remove material more quickly. Place coals on the wood, let them burn for a while, scrape away the charred material, repeat. This technique allows creation of large wooden containers, eventually even boats. The control of fire required for these techniques is sophisticated. You need to maintain the right temperature. You need to prevent the fire from spreading beyond where you want it. You need to know when to add fuel and when to let the fire die down. This is craft knowledge that takes time to develop. Teaching fire techniques would have been challenging. Fire is dangerous. A mistake could result in burns or destroyed materials. So instruction had to be careful, supervised, gradual. Young humans learning these skills would start with simple tasks, tending the fire, adding fuel as directed, before being trusted with actual tool-making. The relationship between fire and wood created a feedback loop in human technology. Fire made wooden tools better, which made hunting and gathering more efficient, which provided more resources to support larger groups and more complex societies, which created more opportunities for specialization and innovation. Fire also enabled preservation of wooden tools. Smoke from fires contains chemicals that repel insects and inhibit rot. Wooden tools stored in or near living areas where fires burned regularly lasted longer than tools left exposed to the elements. This meant tools became more valuable, worth maintaining and repairing rather than discarding. Some researchers believe that fire hardening was one of the key innovations that allowed humans to colonize diverse environments. In tropical regions with no suitable stone, fire-hardened wooden weapons allowed successful hunting. In cold regions where wood was scarce, every piece of wood became more valuable, and fire hardening ensured it lasted longer. The social dynamics around fire and tool-making were complex. Fire was a communal resource. It needed to be tended constantly, protected from rain and wind, fed with fuel. This created a central gathering point for groups. And around this fire, tools were made, maintained, and improved. Imagine an evening scene 200,000 years ago. The group has returned to their camp as darkness falls. The fire is built up for warmth and light. Some individuals are processing the day's gathered plants. Others are working on tools. An experienced toolmaker is carefully rotating a spear shaft over the coals, hardening the point. Younger members watch, learning the technique. This scene would have been repeated countless times across Africa, Europe, and Asia. Fire made human campsites visible from a distance. Columns of smoke by day, flickering light by night. This visibility created both opportunities and risks. Other humans could find you for cooperation or conflict. Predators learned to avoid the strange lights and smells. But fire's role in weapon making specifically deserves more attention. Before fire hardening, wooden spears were limited in effectiveness. They could wound, but might not penetrate deeply enough to quickly kill. This meant wounded animals could escape, leading to lost opportunities and wasted effort. Fire-hardened spears changed this calculation. They could deliver more devastating wounds. Prey hit with these weapons was more likely to be seriously injured, easier to track, more likely to be successfully harvested. This increased hunting success rates, providing more reliable protein sources. The development of fire hardening techniques also shows something important about human cognition. This isn't simple tool use. Many animals use tools. This is tool transformation. Humans were taking one tool, fire, and using it to improve another tool, wooden spear. This is second-order tool use, evidence of abstract thinking and planning. Consider what's required mentally. You need to understand that wood has properties that can change. You need to imagine the improved tool before it exists. You need to control fire precisely to achieve the desired result. You need to evaluate the outcome and adjust your technique accordingly. Each of these steps requires sophisticated cognitive abilities. Different human groups develop different fire hardening traditions. Some preferred higher temperatures for shorter times. Others use lower temperatures over longer periods. Some harden the entire point, others just the tip. These variations weren't random. They reflected different optimization strategies based on available woods and intended uses. As humans migrated into new environments, they had to adapt their fire hardening techniques. Woods in Europe behaved differently than African woods. Wet coastal regions required different approaches than dry inland areas. Each adaptation required experimentation, learning, cultural transmission of new techniques. By about 100,000 years ago, fire hardening was so well established that it probably wasn't thought of as advanced technology. It was just how you made spears. Every adult knew the basics, though specialists undoubtedly had deeper knowledge and better skills. The combination of fire and wood created weapons that were good enough to sustain human populations across diverse environments for hundreds of thousands of years. Even after humans learned to tip spears with stone, fire hardening remained relevant for the wooden shaft itself. The joining point where stone met wood could be strengthened with careful heat treatment. The grip area could be hardened to prevent wear from repeated handling. Fire had another important effect on weapon development. It made weapon making a year-round activity. Before fire, tool making might have been seasonal, done during daylight hours when you could see what you were doing. With fire providing light and heat, tools could be made at night, during bad weather, whenever time was available. This increased the time available for innovation. More hours spent making and improving weapons meant more opportunities to experiment, to notice what worked better, to develop new techniques. The pace of technological change accelerated, at least compared to the millions of years of relative stagnation before fire control. Fire hardening also made it possible to create specialized weapons. A spear for fishing might have multiple fine points, each carefully hardened. A spear for hunting large game might have a single robust point, hardened for maximum durability. A weapon for combat against other humans might be designed differently than hunting weapons. The evidence suggests that by 50,000 years ago, humans were creating weapons that were clearly specialized for different purposes. The variety of wooden tool forms increased dramatically during this period. Fire hardening was part of what enabled this diversification. It made it possible to create different tool forms that would all remain durable and effective. One of the most significant aspects of fire hardening is that it was teachable to everyone. Unlike stoneworking, which required access to specific materials and considerable skill, anyone with access to fire and wood could learn basic fire hardening. This democratized weapon making in a way that had profound social implications. When everyone can make an effective weapon, power dynamics change. Physical strength becomes less important relative to skill and intelligence. Cooperation becomes more necessary because conflict becomes more dangerous when everyone is armed. Social rules need to manage the reality that every adult has the capacity to be lethal. The archaeological record from this period shows evidence of both cooperation and violence. We find sites where multiple groups apparently came together peacefully, sharing resources and probably information. We also find evidence of violent conflicts, including mass graves and individuals killed by weapons. Fire-hardened wooden weapons made both scenarios more significant. Cooperation was more valuable because groups with better weapon-making knowledge could share it, improving everyone's hunting success. Conflict was more deadly because effective weapons were universally available. As we move forward in time, fire remained central to weapon technology. When humans eventually developed metalworking, fire was essential for smelting and forging. When they created ceramics for storing and cooking food, fire enabled the transformation of clay. Fire was the foundational tool that made almost every other technological advancement possible. But its role in hardening wooden weapons specifically represents a crucial moment in human history. It's the moment when humans demonstrated they could use one tool to transform another, when they showed understanding of material properties and how to manipulate them. When they accelerated the development of weapons from simple sharpened sticks to specialized optimized instruments of hunting and warfare. The fire-hardened spear represents the bridge between simple wooden tools and the complex composite weapons that would come later. It showed humans what was possible when they combined different technologies thoughtfully. And it set the stage for the next innovation. Weapons that could kill from beyond arm's reach. Weapons that flew through the air toward their targets. Chapter 6. Spear Revolution. The spear changed warfare and hunting forever because it solved a fundamental problem. Reach. Before spears, you needed to be within grappling distance to hurt something. With a spear, you could strike from 6 feet away, 8 feet, 10 feet depending on the weapon's length. This doesn't sound revolutionary until you think about what it meant practically. Imagine facing a large predator, a lion, a bear, a saber-toothed cat. Without a spear, your only options are running or fighting with your hands and maybe a club. Neither is promising. You're slower than the predator, weaker, less armed naturally. Now imagine facing the same predator with a spear. You can keep the sharp point between you and the animal. If it charges, it impales itself on your weapon. You don't need to be stronger. You need to hold steady. The animal's own momentum becomes the force that drives the spear into its body. This reversal of dynamics was profound. Humans went from being prey to being potential predators of almost anything. The spear was the tool that made this possible. But let's trace how spears actually developed, because they didn't appear fully formed. The evolution of the spear happened gradually, with each innovation building on what came before. The simplest spear is just a pointed stick. Take a straight branch, sharpen one end to a point, and you have a basic weapon. Archaeological evidence suggests humans were making these by at least 400,000 years ago, probably much earlier. The Schningen spears I mentioned are sophisticated versions, but simple pointed sticks would have preceded them by hundreds of thousands of years. These basic spears had significant limitations. The point dulled quickly. The wood could split on impact. They weren't very effective against thick hide or bone, but they were better than nothing, and they extended your reach, which was the crucial advantage. Fire hardening made these simple spears more effective, as we discussed. But the real revolution came when humans started adding stone points to wooden shafts. This created a composite tool that combined wood's length and flexibility with stone sharpness and durability. The earliest stone-tipped spears date to maybe 500,000 years ago. Though the evidence is controversial because wooden shafts rarely preserve. What we find are stone points that show wear patterns consistent with being hafted onto spears and used for thrusting. The tips show impact damage. The bases show wear from being attached to shafts. Creating a stone-tipped spear required multiple skills. You needed to make the stone point, shape it to fit onto the shaft, prepare the shaft to receive the point, and then attach them securely. Each step required knowledge, tools, and practice. The stone point itself had to be designed specifically for this purpose. It needed to be sharp and pointed for penetration. It needed to be shaped so it could be attached to the shaft, usually with a base that was narrower or flatter for hafting. It needed to be robust enough to withstand impact without shattering. Making these points was specialized work. Not everyone could do it well. A skilled stoneworker could create points that were symmetrical, sharp, and durable. Less skilled individuals might create points that broke on first use or didn't attach securely to shafts. The attachment method mattered enormously. The simplest approach was splitting the end of the wooden shaft, inserting the stone point into the split, and binding it with sinew or plant fibers. This worked, but wasn't very secure. Impact could dislodge the point. Better methods involved creating a socket in the shaft, hollowing out the end so the stone point fits snugly inside, and then binding it. Some groups used resin or pitch to glue the point in place, with binding material wrapped over the glue for additional security. The best spears had stone points that stayed attached through multiple impacts, but attachment was always a weak point. Literally. No matter how well made the spear, the junction between stone and wood was vulnerable. Hard impacts could break the shaft or dislodge the point. This meant spears required maintenance and repair. Hunters carried spare points and binding, materials to repair weapons in the field. The length of spears varied depending on their intended use. For thrusting at close range, shorter spears were better, maybe 5 to 6 feet long. They were easier to control and could be thrust with both hands for maximum force. For keeping dangerous animals at a distance, longer spears were preferable, 8 to 10 feet or more. Some groups developed specialized spears. Fishing spears often had multiple points arranged in a row or circle, increasing the chances of spearing a fish. Hunting spears for small game might have smaller, lighter points. Spears intended for large game had larger, heavier points that could penetrate deeply. The spear also changed hunting strategies fundamentally. Before spears, hunting was probably mostly opportunistic, catching small animals, scavenging, maybe cornering injured or young animals. With spears, organized hunting of large game became possible. A group of hunters with spears could surround a large animal and attack from multiple directions. The animal couldn't defend against threats from all sides simultaneously. Even if individual spear thrusts weren't immediately lethal, multiple wounds would cause blood loss and exhaustion. Eventually, the animal would weaken enough to be killed safely. This required cooperation and communication. Hunters needed to coordinate their movements, attack simultaneously, support each other when the animal fought back. Successful hunts probably involved planning beforehand, discussing strategy, assigning roles, agreeing on signals and tactics. The archaeological record shows evidence of organized, large game hunting by about 300,000 years ago. Kill sites contain bones from multiple large animals processed for meat. The animals show evidence of spear wounds. The sites suggest that groups were successfully hunting elephants, rhinoceros, and other megafauna that individuals couldn't possibly kill alone. This abundant protein from successful hunts supported larger human populations. Groups could grow bigger because they had reliable access to significant calorie sources. Larger groups meant more labor for hunting, more protection from predators, more social complexity. But spears weren't just for hunting. They were also weapons of war. As human populations grew and groups competed for resources, violence between groups became more common. And spears made this violence more deadly. A group armed with spears had significant advantages in conflict. They could attack from a distance that simple clubs or hand axes couldn't match. They could defend positions by creating barriers of spear points that were dangerous to approach. They could coordinate attacks with multiple spear-wielding warriors, supporting each other. The evidence for intergroup violence increases in the archaeological record around the time spears became common. We find skeletons with spear wounds. We find mass graves suggesting battles. We find sites that appear to have been defensively positioned, suggesting groups were concerned about attacks from other humans. This is darker, but it's part of the story. The spear made humans more dangerous to everything, including each other. The same tool that let groups successfully hunt megafauna also let them kill members of other groups more effectively. The psychology of spear combat is interesting. Unlike close combat with clubs or hand axes, where you're grappling with your opponent, spear combat happens at arm's length plus the spear's length. You can see your opponent clearly, but you're not in physical contact. This creates a different relationship to violence. Some researchers argue that this distancing made violence easier psychologically. It's harder to hit someone with your fists than to stab them with a spear from 10 feet away. The physical and emotional distance grows together. Others argue that spear combat requires similar courage because you're still in danger. A spear can be knocked aside or turned against you. Either way, the spear changed human relationships with violence. It made killing more efficient, more organized, more strategic. Groups needed warriors who were skilled with spears. Training became important. Practicing throws, learning to thrust effectively, developing defensive techniques by about 200,000 years ago. When anatomically modern humans evolved, spear technology was sophisticated. Different groups had different spear designs reflecting their environments and prey. Coastal groups hunting seals had different spears than savanna groups hunting antelope. Forest dwellers used different designs than those in open grasslands. The spear also influenced human physical evolution in subtle ways. Throwing spears, which we'll discuss more in the next chapter, required specific shoulder and arm anatomy. Humans who could throw more accurately and with more force had advantages in hunting and warfare. Over many generations, this created selection pressure for anatomical features that improved throwing ability. Human shoulders are different from those of other primates. We can rotate our arms through a wider range of motion. Our shoulder joints are more mobile. Our waist can twist to add torque to throws. All of these features make us exceptional throwers compared to other animals, and spear throwing was probably a major driver of these evolutionary changes. The cultural importance of spears can't be overstated. In later human societies, spears become symbols of manhood, warrior status, tribal identity. Elaborately decorated spears serve ceremonial purposes. Special spears are made for ritual hunts or important battles. This symbolic significance probably has deep roots in human history, even in societies that had moved beyond spears technologically. Societies with bows, swords, guns, the spear often retained cultural significance. Greek hoplites fought with spears long after other weapons were available. African warriors carried ceremonial spears. The spear endured because it was more than just a tool. It represented something fundamental about human capability and identity. The engineering of spears continued to evolve. By 100,000 years ago, some spears had sophisticated stone points with barbs or tangs designed to make them more effective. Some had composite points, multiple pieces of stone arranged together. Some had deliberately unbalanced designs that made them tumble in flight, creating larger wounds. Different hafting methods proliferated. Some groups wrapped the binding in complex patterns that were both functional and decorative. Some used multiple layers of different binding materials for increased strength. Some created sockets that allowed quick replacement of stone points in the field. The variety in spear design tells us that humans were constantly experimenting, trying new approaches, sharing successful innovations. This was technology in motion, evolving through deliberate human ingenuity rather than random genetic change. Maintenance of spears was a constant concern. Wooden shafts could warp, crack, or break. Stone points could chip or break. Bindings could loosen or rot. Successful hunters were also skilled craftsmen who could repair their weapons or make new ones as needed. Some evidence suggests that individuals specialized in spearmaking. At some archaeological sites, we find concentrations of stone points and manufacturing debris that suggest dedicated work areas. Perhaps some individuals became known for making particularly good spears, trading their products for food or other resources. This would represent early economic specialization, a crucial step toward more complex societies. The spear also changed human relationships with the landscape. Groups needed sources of good stone for points, straight wood for shafts, materials for binding, pitch for adhesives. This meant maintaining knowledge of where these resources could be found, sometimes traveling significant distances to obtain them, establishing trade networks with other groups who had access to desirable materials. Imagine being a spearmaker 150,000 years ago. You know that the best flint comes from a particular quarry 3 days' travel away. The straightest wood grows in a specific valley. The pitch that makes the strongest glue comes from trees in yet another location. Your ability to make effective spears depends on accessing all these resources and combining them skillfully. This knowledge had to be maintained and transmitted. Young people learned where to find materials, how to recognize quality, when to harvest for best results. This geographical and material knowledge became part of a group's cultural inheritance, passed down through generations. The spear also influenced human settlement patterns. Groups might establish seasonal camps near good hunting grounds. Knowing their spears made it possible to successfully hunt the game that gathered there. They might avoid territories controlled by hostile groups who were also well armed with spears. The distribution of human populations across the landscape was partly determined by spear technology. Defensive considerations became important too. A group armed with spears could defend a position effectively if they had terrain advantages, high ground, narrow passages, barriers that protected them while allowing spear thrusts. This meant some locations were more defensible than others, influencing where groups chose to camp or settle. The throwing spear deserves special attention as we transition to the next chapter. At some point, probably multiple times independently in different populations, humans realized that spears didn't have to be thrust. They could be thrown. This discovery would prove to be one of the most important innovations in weapon history. Early throwing spears were probably just regular spears that someone threw in desperation or experimentation. Maybe a hunter whose prey was escaping threw his spear rather than let it get away. Maybe someone fighting a predator threw their spear when they realized they couldn't get close enough to thrust safely. However it happened, people noticed that thrown spears could kill from distance. Not great distance initially. Throwing a heavy spear accurately was difficult. But even 20 or 30 feet gave enormous advantages. You could wound an animal before it reached you. You could attack prey that was alert and would flee if you approached closer. You could strike from ambush without revealing your position until the spear was already flying. The problem was that regular thrusting spears didn't throw well. They were too heavy, poorly balanced, and didn't fly straight. A spear designed for two-handed thrusting isn't optimized for throwing. The design requirements are different. This led to specialization. Some spears were made specifically for throwing, lighter, better balanced, with different weight distribution. The Schningen spears had that throwing balance built in. Other groups developed their own versions. The lighter throwing spears had a trade-off though. They penetrated less deeply than heavy thrusting spears. They were less effective in close combat. This meant hunters often carried multiple spears, heavy ones for close work and light ones for throwing. This was more equipment to maintain and carry, but the tactical flexibility was worth it. Throwing technique became crucial. Unlike thrusting, which mostly requires strength and commitment, throwing accurately requires skill developed through practice. The motion is complex, a coordinated movement involving legs, torso, shoulders, arm, and wrist. Small errors in technique result in wild throws. This meant that becoming an effective hunter now required extensive practice. Young men, and it was probably mostly men, though certainly not exclusively, spent hours practicing throws. They threw at targets, competed with each other, developed their skills. The best throwers gained status and were valuable during hunts. The spear had another important effect. It changed what prey humans could safely hunt. Before throwing spears, approaching dangerous animals was suicidal. A bear, a lion, a wild boar, these animals could easily kill an armed or poorly armed human. Even with thrusting spears, close combat with dangerous prey was risky. But with throwing spears, you could wound dangerous animals from a safe distance. If your first throw didn't kill, you could throw again. If the animal charged, you could retreat while others in your group threw their spears. The cumulative effect of multiple spear wounds would eventually bring down even large, dangerous prey. This dramatically expanded the human diet. Animals that were too dangerous to approach became viable food sources. This increased hunting success rates and provided more protein to support growing populations and larger brains. The development of the spear represents a crucial transition in human evolution. It's the moment when humans moved decisively from being prey and scavengers to being apex predators. With spears, humans could hunt almost anything. They could defend themselves against almost any threat. They could project force at a distance, coordinate attacks, use strategy rather than just strength. But the spear had reached its limit. Even throwing spears could only reach so far. Accuracy declined rapidly with distance. A talented thrower might be accurate to 40 or 50 feet. Beyond that, hitting a target became mostly luck. Prey that stayed beyond this range was safe. This limitation drove the next innovation. Humans needed a way to kill from even greater distances. They needed weapons that flew farther, straighter, and hit harder than a thrown spear. The answer would come from understanding leverage and mechanical advantage. It would come from inventing a device that amplified human throwing power. But before we get to that innovation, we need to appreciate what the spear had already accomplished. It had turned weak, slow, clawless humans into the most dangerous predators on the planet. It had enabled humans to spread across diverse environments, adapting their spear designs to local conditions and prey. It had created the foundation for organized warfare, territorial defense, and social hierarchy based on martial skill. The spear was humanity's first great weapon, and its influence echoes through history. Even today, modern military bayonets are essentially spear points attached to rifles. The fundamental principles, reach, penetration, coordination, remain relevant. The spear taught humans how to be warriors, how to hunt cooperatively, how to dominate their environment through technology rather than natural weapons. Every weapon that came after the spear owed something to it. Javelins, pikes, lances, bayonets, all are descendants of that first pointed stick. But more than that, the spear taught humans that tools could be designed, optimized, and specialized for specific purposes. It showed that combining materials created superior results. It demonstrated that practice and skill mattered as much as raw materials. The spear revolution wasn't a single moment. It was thousands of years of gradual improvement, experimentation, and refinement. But by the time anatomically modern humans emerged, spear technology was mature, diverse, and sophisticated. Humans had mastered the fundamental weapon that would carry them through the next phase of their evolution. Chapter 7. Throwing weapons distance is safety. This simple truth drove one of the most important innovations in weapon history. Projectile weapons that could kill from beyond the range where prey or enemies could immediately threaten you. Throwing things is deeply human. Watch children on any playground. They throw without being taught. Balls, stones, sticks, whatever they can grab. This instinct is part of our evolutionary heritage. Humans are the best throwers in the animal kingdom by an enormous margin. No other species comes close to our accuracy and power. This ability didn't develop by accident. Our anatomy is specifically adapted for throwing. Our shoulders are mobile in ways other primates aren't. We can rotate our torso to add power. Our wrists can snap at the right moment to add velocity. Our eyes can track projectiles in flight, and our brains can calculate trajectories. All of these features evolved because throwing provided such significant survival advantages. The earliest thrown weapons were probably just rocks. A rock is dense, readily available, and hurts when it hits you. Early hominids almost certainly threw rocks at predators to drive them away, at small prey to stun them, at rivals during conflicts. This required no technology, just the anatomy and instinct to throw. But rocks have limitations. They're not aerodynamic. They don't fly straight. Accuracy diminishes rapidly with distance. You can't throw a rock accurately much beyond 30 or 40 feet unless you're exceptionally skilled and lucky. And while a rock can stun or wound, it often doesn't have enough impact to kill quickly. So humans started modifying throwing weapons. The first modification was probably selecting better rocks. Rounder rocks flew straighter. Denser rocks hit harder. Rocks with a good grip allowed more control. This selection process was simple but effective. The next innovation was purpose-made throwing stones. Instead of picking up whatever was available, humans started shaping stones specifically for throwing. They created spherical or oval shapes that flew better. They found optimal weights, heavy enough for impact but light enough to throw far. Some cultures developed sling stones, carefully shaped and sized for use with slings. Throwing sticks were another early projectile weapon. Take a heavy stick, maybe hardened in fire, and throw it at prey. If you hit a small animal, you could stun or kill it. If you hit a larger animal in the legs, you might injure it enough to slow it down for follow-up attacks. Some throwing sticks were curved. The famous boomerang is a later refinement of this concept, but simpler curved throwing sticks existed much earlier. A curved stick rotates in flight, creating a stabilizing gyroscopic effect. It flies farther and more accurately than a straight stick of the same weight. The Australian Aboriginal peoples developed returning boomerangs that, when thrown correctly, circle back to the thrower. But non-returning boomerangs were the hunting version, heavier, less curved, designed to fly straight and hit hard. These could bring down birds in flight, injure kangaroos or wallabies, stun large prey. Throwing sticks had significant advantages. Wood was lighter than stone, so you could carry multiple weapons. They were easy to make with basic tools. They were effective against birds and small mammals that would be difficult to hunt with other weapons. And they could be used repeatedly if they didn't break on impact. But the real revolution in throwing weapons came with the atlatl, also called a spear thrower or woomera, depending on the region. This device changed warfare and hunting as fundamentally as the spear itself had. An atlatl is mechanically simple, but conceptually sophisticated. It's essentially a stick with a handle on one end and a hook or socket on the other. You place your throwing spear against the atlatl, fitting the spear's butt into the socket. Then you throw, keeping hold of the atlatl while the spear flies free. What makes this effective is leverage. The atlatl effectively extends your arm length. Longer levers move faster at their tips. This is basic physics. By increasing the effective length of your throwing arm by 2 feet or so, you dramatically increase the velocity of the spear when you release it. The results are impressive. A spear thrown by hand might reach 40 or 50 miles per hour. The same spear thrown with an atlatl can reach 80 or even 90 miles per hour. That's nearly double the velocity, which means roughly 4 times the kinetic energy on impact. The increased speed also means increased range and flatter trajectory. The earliest confirmed atlatls date to about 25,000 years ago in Europe, but they were probably invented much earlier. The device is simple enough that it could have been invented multiple times independently. Archaeological evidence is limited because atlatls were made of wood and rarely preserved. What we do have are stone points designed specifically for atlatl darts, lighter and often more elaborate than regular spear points. We have cave art showing figures with what appear to be atlatls. We have bone hooks that may have been atlatl components. And we have experimental archaeology showing how effective these devices are. Making an atlatl requires understanding angles and mechanics. The hook or socket must align correctly with the spear. The handle must allow proper grip and motion. The length must be optimized for the user's arm length and strength. Get any of these wrong, and the device doesn't work well. Different cultures developed different atlatl designs. Some were simple straight sticks with minimal decoration. Others were elaborately carved and decorated. suggesting these tools had social or ceremonial significance beyond pure function. Some had weights attached, called banner stones. That may have improved performance, or may have been purely decorative. The spears used with atlatls were different from hand-thrown spears. They were lighter and usually shorter, typically 4 to 6 feet long rather than 6 to 8. They needed to be more flexible to absorb the stress of the atlatl launch. The points were often larger relative to the shaft because the increased velocity meant they could penetrate deeply even without much mass behind them. Using an atlatl effectively requires practice. The motion is different from hand throwing. You need to keep the atlatl level throughout the throw. The release point must be precise. Your grip, stance, and follow-through all matter. Beginners tend to throw darts that wobble or veer off course. Skilled users can hit targets accurately at 60 or 70 yards. This meant that hunting and warfare changed again. A group of hunters with atlatls could stay well away from dangerous prey while inflicting serious wounds. They could attack from ambush without closing to ranges where the prey could fight back effectively. They could hunt birds in flight or fast-moving animals that would outrun humans. The archaeological record shows evidence of successful mammoth hunting in Europe and North America around the time atlatls became common. Mammoths are dangerous, with tusks and trunks that can kill humans easily. But with atlatls, hunters could stay at relatively safe distances while repeatedly striking the massive animals. Multiple wounds would eventually weaken even a mammoth dot. This wasn't without risk. Even wounded from a distance, a charging mammoth was terrifying. Hunts required courage, coordination, and probably some members of the hunting party acting as bait or distractors while others threw darts. But it was possible, and the payoff was enormous. A single mammoth provided tons of meat, enough to feed a group for weeks or months if preserved properly. The atlatl also changed warfare between human groups. A force armed with atlatls had significant advantages over those with only hand-thrown spears or close combat weapons. They could strike from distance, inflicting casualties before their opponents could close to fighting range. This led to new tactics, formations, and strategies. Defensive warfare changed too. A group defending a position with atlatl could make approaches extremely dangerous. Attackers would face a barrage of darts from protected defenders. This made some positions nearly impregnable and influenced where groups chose to camp or settle. The social implications were significant. Atlatl skill became highly valued. The best atlatl throwers were probably admired, given higher status, and possibly exempted from other work to focus on hunting and fighting. This specialization meant that societies could support individuals who dedicated themselves to developing martial skills. Training the next generation became more complex. Learning to use an atlatl effectively took longer than learning to throw a spear by hand. Young people needed extended practice, guidance from skilled users, and feedback on their technique. This created mentor-student relationships and probably formal or informal training systems. The atlatl spread widely. Archaeological evidence shows atlatl use across Europe, Asia, Australia, and the Americas. Different populations developed distinctive styles, but the basic principle remained the same. Use leverage to throw spears faster and farther in some regions. The atlatl remained the primary hunting weapon for thousands of years, even after the bow and arrow were developed. Aboriginal Australians used woomera, their version of the atlatl, until European contact. Some Native American groups preferred atlatls over bows for certain types of hunting. The device was effective enough to remain relevant even when alternatives existed. Another throwing weapon that deserves mention is the sling. A sling is a pouch attached to 2 cords. You place a stone or other projectile in the pouch, spin the sling to build up velocity, then release one cord to launch the projectile. A skilled slinger can throw stones at incredible velocities, faster than an atlatl dart, comparable to arrows from powerful bows. The oldest archaeological evidence for slings dates to around 10,000 years ago, but they were probably used much earlier. Slings leave little archaeological trace. They're made from perishable materials like leather or plant fiber. The only evidence is sometimes specially shaped sling stones, which are hard to distinguish from natural rocks unless they show distinctive wear patterns or found in contexts suggesting their use. Slings had major advantages. They were lightweight, could be carried easily, and ammunition was everywhere. Any fist-sized stone would work. A skilled slinger could kill small game, drive away predators, or injure enemies from impressive distances. Some historical slingers could reportedly hit targets at 200 yards or more. The disadvantage was that slings required even more skill than atlatl's. The motion is complex and unnatural. Small errors in timing produce wild throws. Learning to use a sling effectively took years of practice. But for people who grew up using them, slings were devastatingly effective weapons. Ancient armies used slingers extensively. Balearic slingers were famous in the Roman world for their accuracy and power. Sling bullets, specially shaped lead or stone projectiles, could penetrate armor or crack skulls. These were serious military weapons, not toys. But in the prehistoric period we're discussing, slings were probably less important than atlatls or simple thrown spears. They were specialist weapons, useful in specific contexts but not universal. The atlatl was more immediately useful for most hunting and fighting situations. Throwing weapons collectively represented a major shift in human capabilities. For the first time, humans could reliably kill from distances where they weren't in immediate danger. This made hunting safer and more successful. It made warfare more complex and deadly. It created new opportunities for those who could master these weapons. The physics of throwing also influenced human culture in unexpected ways. Understanding trajectories, predicting where a projectile would land, judging distances and angles, all of these required spatial reasoning and calculation. Some researchers argue that this contributed to development of mathematical thinking in early human societies. Hunting with throwing weapons also required patience and stealth. You needed to get within range without alerting your prey. You needed to wait for the right moment. You needed to coordinate with other hunters, attacking simultaneously for maximum effect. These skills, patience, stealth, coordination, became valued traits that influenced social evolution. The ecological impact was significant too. Humans with effective throwing weapons could overhunt areas, depleting game populations. Some researchers believe that human hunting pressure, combined with climate changes, contributed to megafauna extinctions around the world. Large, slow-breeding animals that had no evolutionary experience with human hunters were particularly vulnerable. As throwing weapon technology matured, humans dominated every environment they entered. They could hunt effectively in forests, grasslands, mountains, and coastlines. They could kill prey, large and small. They could defend themselves against predators. They were becoming the apex predators of every ecosystem they inhabited. But throwing weapons still had limitations. Atlatl darts were powerful but difficult to carry in large numbers. Slings required extensive training. Simple thrown spears had limited range. What humans needed was a weapon that combined range, accuracy, and the ability to carry substantial ammunition. They needed something that could be used with less training than a sling but more effectively than hand-thrown spears. The answer was already being developed in several places independently. It would become the dominant hunting and warfare weapon for thousands of years. It would enable humans to hunt prey that was previously nearly impossible to catch. It would change social structures, military tactics, and the course of human history. But before that bow and arrow emerged, there was one more category of weapons we need to discuss. Weapons made not from stone or wood, but from the very animals humans hunted. Chapter 8. Bone innovation. When you kill an animal for food, you get more than just meat. You get hide, sinew, bone, antlers, horns, teeth, claws. Early humans learned that these materials were valuable, not just for food, but for tools and weapons. Bone is fascinating stuff. It's hard like stone, but not brittle. It can be shaped more easily than rock. It's available whenever you kill an animal, and it has properties that make it useful for specific applications where stone doesn't work well. The earliest bone tools date back about 2 million years, contemporary with the earliest stone tools. But these early bone tools were simple, just unmodified bones used as clubs or scrapers. Deliberate shaping of bone into specific tool forms came much later. By about 90,000 years ago in Africa, humans were creating sophisticated bone tools. Harpoon points with multiple barbs, bone awls for piercing holes in hide, bone needles for sewing. These required real skill to manufacture and showed understanding of bone's properties. Why use bone instead of stone for weapons? Several reasons. Bone doesn't shatter like stone. If you hit a hard surface with a stone point, it might break. Bone points are more flexible, more forgiving. They bend rather than break, and they spring back to their original shape. Bone is also lighter than stone. For weapons that need to fly, thrown spears, eventually arrows, weight matters. A lighter projectile can fly farther, even if it doesn't hit as hard. For certain applications, this trade-off favors bone. Working bone requires different tools and techniques than working stone. You can't nab bone like flint. It doesn't fracture in the same way. Instead, you carve it, grind it, scrape it. This is slower than stone working, but allows for more detailed shaping. To make a bone point, you start by selecting the right bone. Long bones from legs work well. They're dense, straight, and provide good material to work with. You might break or cut the bone to a manageable size. Then begin the shaping process. Grinding the bone against a coarse stone removes material gradually. You can create points, edges, barbs, whatever shape you need. The process is tedious but precise. Unlike stone working, where one mistake can ruin a tool, bone working is forgiving. You can take your time, check your progress, adjust your technique. Some bone tools were polished to smooth finishes. This wasn't just aesthetic. Smooth bone penetrates flesh more easily than rough bone. The polishing process used increasingly fine abrasives, perhaps ending with leather rubbed with fine sand or powder. The result was a tool that looked almost white, with a shine that suggested careful craftsmanship. Bone needles were particularly important. These allowed sewing of fitted clothing, which was crucial for humans expanding into cold climates. The earliest bone needles date to about 60,000 years ago, though they probably existed earlier with evidence now lost. Making a bone needle is remarkably difficult. You need to create a thin shaft that's strong enough not to break, but fine enough to pass through hide. You need to drill or carve an eye for the thread, a tiny hole that must be precisely positioned. This requires patience, steady hands, and good eyes. The needles tell us something important. Humans by this time had developed enough fine motor control and precision to create very small, detailed objects. This same capability applied to weapon making meant that bone points could be crafted with incredible precision. Barbed bone points revolutionized hunting, especially for fishing and sea mammal hunting. A barb is a backward-facing projection on the point. When the point penetrates, the barb catches on flesh and prevents the weapon from pulling out. The prey is effectively attached to your weapon. For fishing, this is enormously useful. Spear a fish with a plain point, and it might slip off as you pull the spear out of the water. Use a barbed point and the fish stays on the spear. This dramatically increases fishing success rates. For hunting sea mammals like seals, barbed harpoons were game-changing. You could strike a seal, and even if it dove underwater, it remained attached to your harpoon. Eventually, it would tire or drown if the harpoon prevented it from surfacing properly. This made hunting aquatic animals much more reliable. Creating barbed points was technically challenging. You needed to carve notches or projections that were deep enough to catch flesh, but not so deep they weakened the point. The barbs needed to be angled correctly. Too shallow, and they didn't catch. Too steep, and they didn't penetrate in the first place. Different cultures developed different barb designs. Some had a single barb near the tip. Some had multiple barbs along the length of the point. Some had opposed barbs on different sides. Each design reflected different priorities and prey types. Antler was another valuable material. Deer, elk, and similar animals shed their antlers annually, providing a renewable resource. Antler is denser and harder than ordinary bone, making it excellent for tools that needed extra strength. Antler pressure flakers were crucial for stoneworking. These were pieces of antler carved to a point and used to precisely remove small flakes from stone tools. This allowed for much finer stoneworking than was possible with stone-on-stone percussion. The refined stone points and blades from later prehistoric periods were made possible by antler tools. Antler itself could be made into weapons. Spear points carved from antler were extremely durable. Clubs with antler heads were devastating weapons. Some groups created antler projectile points that combine bone's lightness with stone's penetrating power. Ivory from mammoths and other animals was also used. Ivory is similar to tooth enamel, extremely hard and durable. Carving ivory requires significant effort, but the results last. Some of the oldest known art objects are carved from mammoth ivory, showing that humans valued this material for both functional and aesthetic purposes. Horn from cattle, sheep, and similar animals provided another option. Horn is made of keratin, the same material as hair and fingernails, but compressed into a hard material. It can be softened with heat and shaped, then hardens again as it cools. This thermoplastic property made horn useful for creating curved or complex shapes. The composite possibilities were exciting. You could combine materials in single weapons to optimize different properties. A spear might have a wooden shaft for lightweight and flexibility, a bone point for penetration and durability, stone barbs inserted into the bone for extra cutting power, and sinew binding holding everything together. These composite weapons represented sophisticated engineering. Each material did what it did best. The combination was superior to any single material alone. And creating these weapons required knowledge of multiple material types and techniques. Sinew deserves special mention. This is the tendon and connective tissue from animals, and when dried, it becomes incredibly strong. Wet sinew is flexible and can be wrapped around objects. As it dries, it contracts and hardens, creating an extremely tight binding that holds components together. Sinew was used to attach stone points to shafts, to bind barbs in place, to create backing for bows, which we'll discuss later, and for countless other applications. Some cultures use sinew for thread, sewing clothing and creating bags or containers. Processing sinew requires knowledge. You need to remove it carefully from the animal without damaging it. It needs to be cleaned, dried partially, then shredded into fibers. These fibers can be twisted together into cordage or used individually for binding. Done correctly, sinew creates binding stronger than most plant fibers. Bone weapons had another advantage. They could be repaired more easily than stone. A damaged bone point could sometimes be reshaped to remove the damage. Stone points, once broken, were often unusable. This meant bone weapons had longer useful lifetimes. The aesthetic quality of bone weapons is striking. Many bone points are beautiful objects, smooth, symmetrical, carefully crafted. Some have decorative elements carved into them, notches, patterns, designs. This suggests that weapons weren't purely functional. They also had social meaning. A well-made bone weapon announced its owner's skill and status. The time invested in creating such an object showed dedication and expertise. Carrying such a weapon made a statement about who you were. This social dimension of weapons would only grow stronger as human societies became more complex. By about 40,000 years ago, humans were creating a wide variety of bone weapons for different purposes. Fishing harpoons with multiple barbs, throwing spear points designed for atlatls, heavy bone clubs for close combat, light bone awls that could serve as desperate stabbing weapons. Each represented accumulated knowledge about what worked for specific applications. The innovation in bone working accelerated around this time, coinciding with the expansion of modern humans into Europe and the apparent displacement of Neanderthals. Some researchers argue that superior bone-working technology gave modern humans advantages in hunting and warfare that contributed to their success. Neanderthals did use bone tools, but their bone technology appears less sophisticated than that of contemporary modern humans. Whether this technological difference was significant enough to affect competitive outcomes remains debated, but it's certainly possible that better weapons contributed to modern human success. The use of animal materials for weapons also created interesting feedback loops. Successful hunting provided materials for better weapons, which enabled more successful hunting. Groups that were good at making bone weapons had advantages that let them acquire more animals, which provided more materials for weapons. Storage of bone materials became important. Unlike freshly cut wood that can be worked immediately, bone often needs to age or be processed before it's ideal for tool making. Groups might store bones, letting them dry and cure, creating stockpiles of raw materials for future needs. This forward planning, storing materials for future use, investing time in creating durable tools, represents sophisticated cognitive abilities. These weren't behaviors driven by immediate needs. They were strategic decisions based on anticipated future scenarios. The variety of bone weapons also reflects diverse human environments by this period. Coastal groups focused on fishing harpoons and seal hunting equipment. Inland groups developed weapons for land animals. Arctic peoples created specialized tools for hunting marine mammals through ice. Each environment selected for different innovations. Knowledge of bone-working techniques had to be transmitted culturally. Unlike simple stone flaking, which can be figured out through experimentation, the detailed process of creating a complex bone harpoon required instruction. Young people learned by watching skilled crafters, receiving guidance, practicing under supervision. This created another form of social stratification. Individuals skilled in bone working were valuable to their groups. They probably received better treatment, higher status, more influence in group decisions. Their specialized knowledge made them important members of their communities. The tools needed to work bone were themselves sophisticated. Scrapers for removing material, gravers for creating fine details, drills for making holes, polishers for finishing. Each of these tools had to be made and maintained. Tool making required tools, creating layers of technology built on previous innovations. By about 20,000 years ago, bone weapon technology had reached remarkable sophistication. Some harpoons had detachable points that separated from the shaft when they struck prey. This allowed the hunter to remain connected to the prey via a line attached to the detachable point, while the shaft floated and marked the prey's location. This is complex engineering solving specific hunting challenges. The combination of bone, wood, and stone in composite weapons represented the peak of prehistoric weapon technology before the development of the bow. These weapons were lighter than all stone implements, more durable than all wood weapons, and more versatile than either material alone. But all of these weapons, stone, wood, bone, and combinations, still had fundamental limitations. Even atlatl darts had limited range. Accuracy decreased with distance. The amount of ammunition you could carry was constrained, and all these weapons required significant training to use effectively. What humans needed was a weapon that stored energy mechanically, that could be aimed more precisely, that used lighter ammunition you could carry in quantity. They needed a weapon that amplified human power more effectively than leverage alone. They needed to invent a device that bent, stored energy, and released it on command. They needed to invent the bow.